downtown at the clerk's office. Noble Drew Ali's anniversary of his birthday. Getting it in, filing nationality. What could be better?
Now, some might ask, why? Don't worry, I got you. I posted on it recently. Noble Drew Ali said, if you don't do anything else, proclaim your nationality and realize the importance of being recognized by nations of the earth in Acts 6. Moors act like proclaiming is an end goal, not a minimum standard. Some will go as far as to say you don't need legal documentation. When presented with an affidavit and a way to be legally on record as a Moor, they say the prophet didn't bring that, even though he used an affidavit to file our authority. And here, I can show you the original document that he had, and then a clearer version of it on the back of this. Most will recognize this for being on the back of the 101s. This is clearer to see. It's a religious affidavit of organization. Now, if you're familiar with my old way of teaching, then you know I'm about to really go in. Nationality, name change. And this is just different aspects of it. So just to keep it simple, I'm going to be breaking down private declarations, affidavit, or exemplified affidavit in the way we use it, proclaiming through a temple, most temples, not all, and then a court order. That is, court-ordered name change. And keep in mind, when I'm breaking down a temple court order, these are without using nationality affidavits, which some temples do. And I'm going to put each of these 4 common methods into these 6 categories to really break down what's going on and help people understand. So first off, we're going to go with scope, which is public and private. Going to set all of them in their proper places, as you can see. The private declaration, private. The exemplified affidavit, that could be public or private. It goes in both lanes. Temple is private and then court order is public. For the best legal definition here, we're going to describe private as being personal or not on public record, and also not being able to interact with corporation. And public is being on the public record and being able to interact with the corporation. So there are advantages and disadvantages to both. You'll hear people say public and private don't mix, but there's ways to hack in and out of the matrix when you need to. And I'll get into that in a later date. Now, time is an interesting one because the quicker things take, the less legitimate the process seems and really is kind of overall when it comes to law. And I have to kind of break down what the processes are a little bit more when it comes into time. So with the private declaration, it's quick. You can do it one day, download something off the internet, or somebody bring you some paperwork, y'all sign it, and then they say you're a Moor that day. And you were already a Moor before you got the paperwork. You kind of just wrote it down and signed it on paper. And that's about all you do. So with the exemplified affidavit, that one takes 1 to 4 weeks generally for it to come back from the courts, because it's a process of not only doing the affidavit, but getting what's called an exemplified copy, which is a certificate that's signed by the head elected clerk and judge, stating that your affidavit is in due form of law and is a correct copy of what's on the record. So that's able to be used in both public and private, and it gives the same effect of law as a court order without having to jump through the same hoops as the court order. Now, with the temple and I'm excluding some temples that do lawful processes, and the temple I'm a part of, number 84, shout them out because they do the exemplified affidavits. But there's, in most temples, quick 1 day process if they allow you to get it the first day you go. But they generally write your name down on a pre-printed nationality card and give it to you, and maybe a few other things like the date, the age you were at the time you proclaimed your nationality, stuff like that. The court order process, now that's depending on the court, all the hoops that they may make you jump through in that particular jurisdiction. Background checks, make you do fingerprints, send it in to the state capitol, and that process, depending on you where you are, could take from weeks to months to, if you're in the state capitol, maybe same day. I've heard of same day in one particular occasion, but that person happened to stay in the state capitol. And if you're able to maybe travel to the state capitol or stay in one, that may make it easier, but that's not necessarily true in all situations. Okay, perceived risk. And I say perceived risk because it's not necessarily actual risk in every situation, but I'm put it into perspective with all of them because it's what is rumored or things that people perceive to happen depending on where you are, who you're dealing with, temples or people in the public like lawyers and others may call you sovereign citizens for trying to do certain things. So they'll give you a perceived risk of proclaiming your nationality and being a Moor, maybe outside of being in the temple or doing things with the court order or in a way that they're not familiar with because they don't understand law. So when it comes to law, when you're trying to do anything outside of the way a lawyer would tell you to do it, they'll want to call you a sovereign citizen and put that label on you. So that's kind of where that comes from in general. But let's start off. So with private declarations and perceived risks, number one thing, well, couple things that you'll hear, but number one, going to jail for something illegal. They think that you're doing something that's necessarily legal when it's not. It's just that you're doing something in a private fashion, so it might not necessarily get the public recognition. Also, perceived risk it not working, where there's some applications where your private declaration will work and have some standing, but in a lot of public situations when you want to use it, like people going to court and trying to use it for things like that, there it's not necessarily applicable. Another perceived risk with private declarations is people will say you're getting scammed when you're not necessarily getting scammed. It's more of private in the sense of family matters. So, like dealing with your estate. Think of it like a personal trust, or maybe certain details of your personal trust you wouldn't want to be public. It would only be private. Like, let's say your bank account. You wouldn't necessarily put your bank account information into your trust where someone could access it through the public record. Like, let's go with Cash App. You wouldn't put your Cash App email and password into your trust and file that portion into the public record. You would, at minimum, redact it, but in general, you wouldn't even put that into the public because that's private information. Same thing with your private declaration. That's something that if it's only private, then when dealing with people in the public, how will they know? It won't necessarily get the same recognition. As long now, on the other hand, with getting your affidavit exemplified, the perceived risk, you'll hear people say never use their courts. And that's generally people that are doing the private declaration. They'll say never use their courts. So that's their only complaint that I've ever heard when doing this process, is that we shouldn't use their courts. And it's really weird because these are the people that are generally battling the most in the courts. These are the people that have the biggest problems and don't understand why we file in their courts. The second biggest group of people that have a problem with us using their courts for some strange reason or doing the process is the people that are in the temple. Or I should say, in a temple that doesn't generally help out with law and legal situations, which brings me into the perceived risk of operating with a temple, or at least one that doesn't deal in law, is no legal help, which in a lot of cases, if you're dealing with that type of temple, it's true. If they're not helping you out in these type of situations, you're not getting legal help. And it's a lot of situations where I've heard of where the Grand Sheik will tell you to go get a lawyer. And that's just not necessarily what a lot of Moors want to do. Or they'll tell you to go get a court order name changed instead of any of these other methods on here. Now, with a court order, the perceived risk, one of the things is privacy, because you're doing it totally in the public and it's just a name change. Another one is amalgamation as a citizen, or basically making your L or your Bay a citizen, which, if you're not using an exemplified affidavit going along with it, is the legitimate argument, just to be honest. And being under their jurisdiction, another perceived risk, which, depending on how you do your court order name change, outside of an exemplified affidavit, there are other methods, but I don't recommend them as much. And then you definitely get into the same people that talk about, only using private declarations, using the same argument against getting an exemplified affidavit saying, hey, we'll just never use their courts, but, they have more problems than pretty much anybody else, just to be honest. So when we get into the effect of private declaration, just being honest, there's little to no government recognition. It's a hit or miss thing when you're using your documents. So putting them into the courts, you may get some success with minor traffic tickets or very minor things when it comes to criminal situations. But if it becomes a little bit more extreme, and especially something that makes the news, like the rise of the Moors, or some of these other people that tried taking houses and things of those sort, these people that use private declarations, they always come up and charge and call them by their straw man, and then people think that they're being denationalized, but it's just the effects of their private affidavits, or their private declarations are not there. And, I know this from helping people over the years, trying, different methods myself. So, I'm going from experience of myself and others that there's really little to no government recognition. And that's one of the things we just spoke on in Act 6. And, I could put Act 6 in here, just to show you. But, the prophet said we need to be recognized by the governments of the earth and in which we live. So, recognition is a part of being a Moor. So with little to no government recognition, this is why I switched to doing nationality affidavits and getting them exemplified. And with that, it's a private process with public recognition of name and nationality. So your name and nationality, you're using a private process, and it's still getting recognized on the government record publicly as well. When you go over to the temple, same thing. little to no government recognition, and that's because in most temples, not all, all you're getting is your temple card. So the temple as a whole might be recognized, but personally, you don't get that same recognition. Now, with a court order, this one's interesting. It's a public process, and you have recognition of the name. And again, I'm saying this including only the court order name change, not including nationality exemplified affidavit with it, but they're recognizing your L or Bay in the public when you do the court order process, but that's it. It doesn't go any further than that. So next, with end of the day or end of the year, because pretty much the same, but I'm dealing with long-term effects. When you do your private declaration, your name and nationality is still a straw man in their system. There's just nowhere around there. There's no alteration of any records at all. You've done your own personal records, but as far as the way the system sees you, if anything happens, that's what's gonna come up. That's what they're gonna put on a ticket. If you're stopped, that's what your fingerprints are gonna pull up in the long run. So after a day or after a year, of this status correction or whatever you want to call it with your private declaration, this is what the end of the day, end of the year results are going to be. Now, with your affidavit exemplified, your name and nationality, or your appellation and your nationality, are now on the record, and you choose to alter any public records or credentials. So it's a choice that you have. It's not necessarily what has to be done. And I say that in opposition to kind of how a court order works, and I'll go into that a little bit later in just a moment. But with the temple, it's pretty much the same as a private declaration. Your name and nationality is still a straw man in their system. That's just exactly how it is. There's no alteration of any public records. The only alteration that you have is in the records of the temple itself. And what does the temple do with those records, that put you on any public record, or do they even at all do anything in those lines? Most of them, I've never heard of any process that they have. I'm not going to say that none do, but for the most part, nothing else is happening. Now, court orders work a little different, but it depends on jurisdiction. Your name will be changed, nationality maybe, or use an exemplified affidavit with it or not. And then the court orders the alteration of records as they see fit, even if you don't want to change it. So, give you a real good example. Some of the things that I've seen in different court orders, they'll order the change of your driver's license or state ID, your social security card, your birth certificate is another one, and not everybody wants to change the birth certificate. Maybe even your passport. So they don't necessarily give you the option to change those. Whereas when you do the exemplified affidavit, you choose specifically what record you want to alter, because not everybody wants to change everything. So, there are benefits of changing certain records but not changing others. Like, I don't recommend people to change their birth certificate, but some states, when you do the court order name change, they order the vital statistics to change the birth certificate, and there's nothing you can do about it once you've done that court order. So with your credentials, all of these you can have private nationality card. But what's more interesting is when you have your private declaration, you still have straw man ID, driver's license, passport, social security card. There's no change in that. Even if you surrender those documents, they're still on record for you. If they pull your fingerprints, that's still what's coming up. When you do the exemplified affidavit, you have your private nationality card, but you can have your national driver's license, ID, passport, social security card, all of those things. You can choose to change any one of those as you see fit, birth certificate, etc. It's all up to you. Um, with the temple, it's the same thing as the private declaration. You can still have your private nationality card or your temple card, but everything else is still in your straw man. Now, with a court order, this one's interesting. You can have your private nationality card, but everything else is just name changed. There's not necessarily nationality added to it without having your affidavit in your court order as well. So you have your name changed on your ID, passport, social security card, etc. But that doesn't necessarily mean your nationality is added in along with it. So you don't necessarily get the same benefits of going in and out of the system. Basically, you aren't able to hack the matrix in the same way. And the reason I say that is because without nationality, you're still pretty much in that same black citizen status. And even though you just have a Moorish name. So while I never tell people exactly what they have to do, everybody has the option and the free will to do exactly what they want to do. I recommend everyone get their nationality affidavit exemplified on the record, because it's the best of both worlds. And only people that need court orders absolutely are people that work in high security jobs where they have extreme background checks and things of that sort. And I talk to people about that in consultations more in deep to if you really need it or not per se. And there will be a link below to my coffee site where you can get a membership and come take the classes where I'm going to show people actually how to go do all of this. And we also offer the service of filing for you, because it's not that you can't file your nationality yourself, but one of the biggest things over the years since I've been in the movement is people not being able to file in their local counties. And that's because just from my experience and what I found out is that every local county doesn't accept outside affidavits or outside filings. And what that means is filing of anything that is not a particular template of something that they already have. So if they don't have a nationality affidavit template that they give, you can't file it there. It's long. So for those that don't know yet, my first book is on Amazon for sale now. I got my proof copy. It's a great size, and people are already starting to get theirs in the mail.